Okay then guys, here we go with my delicious apple pie with a lattice top. We're going to start off with the filling for the pie, so for that we got 6 Bramley apples, some soft brown sugar, now a variety of spices. The more you use the better, or you can just use mixed spice, and I'm using ground cinnamon, ground cloves, mace, ginger, nutmeg and allspice. We got some corn flour, a pinch of salt and egg and butter. They'll be used later on. So the first thing to do is get these apples peeled. So we're going to peel the apples. I use 6 Bramleys. Maybe could have used more. If you want a raised pie, then use a few more, certainly. Cut them in half. Core them. And then just slice them into maybe 6mm, 1/4 inch slices. Once you've got all your apples sliced up and in the bowl, we're going to cover them with the spices and the sugar. Very much like pickled onions where you take the moisture out, but this time we're going to keep the moisture. So in with the brown sugar, ground cinnamon, ground ginger, allspice, the nutmeg and the mace, and at some point the salt and the ground cloves went in as well. Once it's all in there, give it all a good mix in. You can use your hands or a spoon. Get the apples well and truly covered. And what the sugar's going to do, the sugar and the salt, they're going to draw some of the moisture out of the apples and make a lovely thick syrup in the bottom. Once you're happy it's all mixed together, cover with cling film or a damp tea towel will do, and just set it aside for a couple of hours. And while the apples are doing their thing, it's time to make the pastry. Now this is, I don't know what to call it really, a buttery short crust I think it is, and it is simplicity itself. Plain flour and butter, cold butter. Now I don't use iced butter, just very, very cold. Iced water, a little pinch of salt and a tablespoon of sugar because it's a sweet pastry. You can make this a day or so in advance if you want and leave it in the fridge, but we had a spare couple of hours, so ideal time to do it. As you can see, I'm using anchor butter for this, and it wasn't until I stood the block of butter on its side I thought it's a bit thinner than normal, and it turns out, I didn't know this, it turns out that anchor butter comes in 200g blocks, whereas every other butter in the UK comes in 250g blocks. So watch out for that one, guys. I nearly just guessed it as I usually do, you know. So lucky I checked the back. Cube the butter into 1/2 inch or 1 centimetre chunks. You want to be doing this fairly quickly. This butter was only out the fridge for 10 minutes and it's warming up already. In hindsight, I could have cubed the butter earlier and left it in the fridge, and indeed I could have weighed the flour out earlier to stop the butter warming up. But all done now, and well, the pastry turned out okay anyway. And this is a food processor pastry, this one, with the vicious blade. So in with about half the flour, then all of the butter, eventually. Just split them up a little bit, and then the rest of the flour. And what this does, it just gets the butter coated a bit quicker. In with a teaspoon of salt and a tablespoon of sugar. You can use Custard or granulated, doesn't really matter for this one. On with the lid and pulse away. Now what you're seeing is actual footage. This is how long it took. Exactly, no editing for this bit. So just about 6 pulses, I'm guessing. And what we end up with is a mix that looks like breadcrumbs. And if it looks like this, it's time to add the water. Ice cold water if possible, stone cold water if not. And 6 tablespoons. Not 4, not 5, not 7, 6. Lid back on and real-time footage again. 2 big long pulses for me this time. And if you look carefully, you'll see it gradually turning a yellowish colour. Give it a little mix, a little shake up. There we are, let's go in yellow now. And that is it, done. Give it a little pinch, and if it sticks together, it's ready. Remove the blade. Always a good idea that if you don't want blood in your pastry. Tip it out onto your work surface and just bring it all together. And you'll find it sticks together very quickly, and you can dab around with the ball and pick the little pieces up. I cut the ball of pastry into roughly 2/3 and 1/3, 2/3 for the pie base, 1/3 for the lattice topping. Roll the pieces up a little bit, then just press them down, and what this does, it makes it easier to roll out when we come to use it. And wrap them in cling film. Leave them in the fridge for at least an hour. And now you'll see we're tying up with the time for the apples. Okay, it's time to start building the pie. Oh no, I've got the wrong pie dish. I'm sure it'll be all right. Anyway, pastry out the fridge, it's been in about an hour and a half actually. And bear with me if you're experienced at making pastry. This is a teach your granny to suck eggs bit. Lightly flour the work surface. Put your round of pastry on it. Now you can bang it flatter with a rolling pin. I've tried this before, never worked for me, so I just push it out. And just roll, turn 90 degrees, roll. Just keep everything well floured, stop it sticking. I'm not one of these ones that likes to flip it upside down. I just keep on the same surface all the time. And at some point, you'll need to get your pie dish and gauge that you've got the right size. Now I like my pastry a little bit thick on the base. I want a bit of substance, you know. If I've got a cold bit of pie, I want to be able to pick it up and eat it, so I don't want a flimsy pastry. Anyway, speed this up. Okay, we've rolled the pastry out the size we want it. Time to give your pie dish a really, really good buttering. And I mean really good. You can actually see the butter left behind on the bottom there. We've gone to all this trouble. We do not want the pie to stick in the pie dish. Wrap your pastry over the rolling pin a little bit. Just helps to pick it up. Slide the dish underneath and lift the pastry on top of the dish. There we go. And just gently ease the sides of the pastry into the dish. Don't push it because you'll crack it. A bit like that. Doesn't matter if you do. Just use your fingers and thumbs to push it back together again. And if you've got a bit missing, just break a piece off and fill up the gaps. It's a very forgiving pastry, this one. And when you've got it all in, get a sharp knife and just trim around the top. Here's the apples 2 hours later. You can see they've taken on a bit of colour. So what we do now, in with 2 tablespoons of corn flour. And what this does, this thickens up the syrup in the bottom. I do 1 tablespoon at a time and mix it in. You can see the syrup there, look at that. If you just put these apples in the pie without doing this, you'll get a very nice apple pie, but you won't get that lovely jammy bit in the bottom. So give it all a good mix in. Then we'll start filling the pie. Get the mix in there, push it into the corners, if you can call it corners on a circle. Don't push too hard though, you don't want to force the apples into the pastry. And then we pour over that lovely, lovely syrup. Look at that. Brilliant. Make up an egg wash, 1 egg and a splash of water. And give it a good mix in. It's all about mixing this cooking lark, isn't it? Grab your smaller piece of pastry, and with this one we want to roll this into a sort of rectangle, and if it's not going into a rectangle, just fold it in half and carry on rolling, just like that. We want long strips for this. We're going to cut them out in a minute. Brush the egg wash around the rim of the pastry in the pie base. Just helps the lattice stick, this does. And it gives it a bit of colour when it's cooking as well. And brush the pastry that we're going to use to make the lattice. The reason for doing this now is, have you ever tried to brush egg wash on a lattice when it's on a pie? Not very easy, and especially when you're going to sprinkle sugar over it like we are. Grab your pizza cutter and just roll it down the pastry to make strips as wide or as thin as you like. Now, my excuse for being uneven is I'm going for the rustic look, okay? There we are. I've seen people make a right pig's ear of doing lattices on a pie, so this is how I do it. I'm doing a 5x5 lattice. So centre piece in, then the two on the side, longest pieces in the middle, shorter pieces to the sides. That's one direction done. And what we do then is fold back pieces 2 and 4, then lay over the centre piece going horizontally, fold 2 and 4 back, fold down 1, 3 and 5, and put another piece on, fold those back over, tuck down 2 and 4, and exactly the same the other way. Fold back 1, 3 and 5, lay another piece on, back over, up with 2 and 4. It's easier to do than describe, believe me. But there you are. I hope you've learned something from this. Job done. And just firm the lattice pieces into the top of the pie, trim them off, push them off, break them off, and then because I've got a crinkly top pie dish, I've just gone round with thumb and pushed the pastry into the dents, if you know what I mean. Okay, chop up some butter and put a little knob of butter in each hole. You don't have to do this, but it's that little bit of decadence, you know what I mean. Job done. So in the oven, 75 minutes at 200 Celsius until it's golden brown and the juices are bubbling. A bit like this. Wow. Well guys, it's got to be done. It doesn't come across very well, but there really is a thick appley jam in the base of the pie, and this is from the liquid and corn flour mix that we made earlier. Oh wow, let's do it. Oh yeah. That is lovely. Oh. One thing missing though. Back in a moment. And what is the one thing missing? Ice cream? Double cream? No, it's a custard. We're going to make an easy custard and I'm going to serve it 2 different ways. So we got some eggs, milk, corn flour, vanilla extract, sugar and double cream. The way I do my custard, it makes about 500 ml. So the yolks of 2 eggs, 250 ml of milk, 300 ml of double cream. Give it a good stir in first because it tends to settle out in the bottom of the pot. Good splash of vanilla extract. Give it all a good mixing and then put it in your pan ready for warming up in a moment. egg yolks, corn flour, and sugar into a jug and give it all a good mix in. We want to get the sugar dissolved. Probably best to use caster sugar for this one. Don't want grainy custard, do we? Ooh, it's coming together nice and thick now. That'll do. Heat the milk and cream mix up. We want to get it very hot but not quite boiling, so as soon as you see the first couple of bubbles, turn the heat off and let it cool down for a good 5 minutes. Time to add the hot milk to the eggs. Now, slow and sure wins the game here. If the milk's too hot or you put too much in one go, you'll curdle the eggs and you'll have a very nice jug of scrambled egg but no custard. So for the first couple of scoops, slow and sure, get it all mixed up. And once the eggs get acclimatised, if you like, you can get a bit more bold and put the lot in. Stir continuously and you'll have a lovely custard. Personally, I like a nice thin runny custard. It soaks into the pastry a bit better. But if you want a thicker custard, just pour it all back into a pan and on the hob. The longer you heat it, the thicker it will get. Well, here we go. Excuse me, that's a good one, guys. And all I've done with this custard is, well, it's exactly the same mix as the last one. A few drops of yellow food colouring and then heat it up on the stove top. Make it nice and thick. This one's great cold. Just as good. Well, hope you enjoyed this one, guys. Certainly one of my favourites. Look after yourselves, take care out there, and I will catch you on the next recipe.